All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Control Camp, a community built for and by independent artists. I'm one of your hosts, Daraj, and joining me are my amazing co-hosts, Eric Campbell, Steph Fink, and we just appreciate you joining us. We host rooms every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we like to interview industry guests and talk about how you can get your music into TV and film. And so get to know more about us and all of our resources that we have available over at controlcamp.com. And if you haven't already, be sure to tap the green icon at the top and follow our club so you'll get notified for every new room that we host. And today's camp discussion actually a really special one in light of AAPI month, a Heritage Month. We wanted to give you a chance to meet some of the top AAPI pros in the music industry. And so in a minute here, we're going to introduce our guest. And we just expect it to be a really, really enriched and enlightened conversation. But before we get started, we ask that you will go ahead and just ping a few people, ping a few artists, producers, composers, or whoever you think might benefit from this topic. And so we're super excited to get this thing going. Eric, I'm gonna kick it back over to you, and let's just start.
Awesome, awesome. So we're going to start with introductions and get to meet the people on the panel. I think we have one more guest that is on the way coming up, but we'll start with the wonderful people that are here. And before we start with that, Steph, any words of intro?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to get Rembrandt in. um, um, you know what? I love these nights. We have been, obviously, we're, as Daraj said, a community of creators and executives that are, all peer led. So it's super nice when we can highlight specific groups. And, we did one for Black History Month where we featured Black creators. We did one for Women's History Month where we featured actually women executives. And I'm super excited for AAPI month because now we're doing both executives and creators. And I think it's great not only to build perspective in the community, but also to build that empathy between um, kind of the executive and creative side as well. So I'm super pumped for tonight. And I'm going to bring in another special guest mod aside from Alyssa, who I'll let you introduce. I'm going to work on getting Rembrandt in here. We're having a technical difficulty, and he's the king of Clubhouse. So I'll give you a moment, and I'll come right back with him.
No worries, no worries. But we'll take that time to introduce our other co-host for the day, who is always awesome and always steps in and, with a lot of these special nights and helps out with just setting the tone of the room, asking really cool and insightful questions. And so we want to once again welcome Alyssa Leon Smith, who's the VP at Quincy Jones Productions. Alyssa, welcome to the stage.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, do you want to say anything in light words of introduction or just setting some of the tone for the evening? Any thoughts on your mind?
Yeah, first of all, I'm just happy to be here. Thank you again for asking. And just so everybody knows, I am Asian. I'm mixed. So it's definitely a point of conversation I've run into many times in my life of, okay, well, what are you? And it's like, okay, I can identify as more than one thing. And I think that's something that mixed people are faced with a lot is just trying to be put into one specific box, but yet and still you feel like you're more than just one thing. So that's why I am also on this panel. So, I am also Asian. So, hello, everybody.
Awesome, awesome. So well, glad to have you. And this is going to be a great discussion. And while we're here, let's talk about our other co-host, Rembrandt Flores. This is Rembrandt's first time on our stage, so welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored that you guys asked me to be here.
Cool. Rembrandt, would you like to? We're just doing introductions. We introduced Alyssa, who's also serving as co-host and co-moderator. And would you like to Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. My name is Rembrandt Flores, and I'm the co-founder of Entertainment Fusion Group. We are a full-service communication agency headquartered in LA. Our company offers 4 verticals of service, including media relations, influencer outreach, celebrity artist partnerships, and events. Our main job is to figure out how to thrust our clients into the forefront of the cultural zeitgeist. I also recently launched a new company called Agency, and that helps brands and talent navigate and monetize on social audio platforms like this one. And in my spare time, which is not so often not, but I do some angel investing. I've made over 30 investments, predominantly in the CPG DTC spaces, and I look forward to helping more founders slash problem solvers on their mission to disrupt and improve our daily lives. Thank you guys.
Awesome. So glad to have you here, helping moderate this discussion. And so, with us on the stage, the way that we'll do the moderation today, I'm about to introduce our guests who we're spotlighting. And so we'll take this first hour of this 2 hour room to interview our guests. We have different questions we want to ask, and we're really comfortable just kind of passing questions around to each other. And so, with the five of us, if anyone has a question, and Steph or Daraj can demonstrate this now, we'll use the slow flash of the microphone to just kind of say, hey, I want to jump in. And then whoever's kind of talking at that time will kind of pass the mic, and that way we can kind of pass the mic around to each other. So anytime you want to interject with a question or do a follow-up question, we can work it that way. So that being said, we have three of our four guests on stage. So let's start with that. I'd like to go around first and just have the guests introduce themselves. We just a brief introduction, kind of saying who you are and your role, especially in the music industry. If it's sync licensing or just music in general, let us know who you are. And let's start with Pepe.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to be on this great panel with all these other wonderful people. My name is Pepe Chang, and I am the co-founder of What Up Pitches. We are a sync agency and a custom music production house. So we wear a lot of different hats there. We have a boutique catalog with indie artists. We also, like I said, we do custom music. And then we also host educational events and workshops that bring together the music community. So I'm really, excited to be a part of that great team. And shout out to Marie. I see her out there in the room tonight, one of my other pitches. And my background before that was as a composer, and I have done a lot of TV and film scoring. My background is in classical piano, so that's it in a nutshell.
Awesome. So glad to have you on stage, Pepe. Thank you so much. Let's switch to Koichi's like a regular Clubhouse, but tonight you're in the spotlight, bro. And we're just happy to celebrate you and also just get to know more about you. So tell the people who you are for those who don't know.
Hey, appreciate you, bro. Always happy to be here. My name is Koichi Sanchez. Similar to Alyssa, I'm half Asian, half Japanese and Peruvian. On my end, I am a composer, producer, sound designer, songwriter. I guess kind of depends on the day. Today is more on the producer side of things, but yeah, I've done a ton of albums for production libraries such as APM, Universal. And then on the flip side, I'm also in the studio with artists, songwriting, and making beats for them, whatever they need. Sometimes I operate as a custom house. I work with some folks on stage as well as some folks in the room. Yeah, very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, and thirdly, we have An. How are you, An?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here on stage with everybody. Shout out to Jessica for the invite. I think she's in the room. I know I went on, as she called it, a bit of a rant about AAPI representation, and I like to call it more of an impassioned speech. So I'm definitely happy to be here with you guys. My name is An. I'm an artist manager. I currently work with a super talented artist by the name of Twee. She's a Vietnamese American artist from the Bay Area. Before management, I spent 5 years in royalty litigation. and copyright work at Universal Music Group. So I essentially worked on copyright infringement cases. So anytime any UMG artists were sued, my team and I looked at all the details that went into that. So I'm not a sync pro, but I am definitely happy to share anything about management and branding. Had a short stint in brand partnerships at CAA before UMG, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you, guys.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much. So glad to have you. All right, and now we are still waiting for Brian Nguyen, who's been here before. He's the creative licensing director for Ghostwriting Music. He messaged us to say that he was held up, but will be here shortly. So we look forward to having him on the stage. And so, all right, let's just jump in. And you all kind of talked about your background, so I'm just going to start asking a little more detail, because normally what we're focused on in the room is sync licensing, and today we want to kind of broaden to kind of creatives, executives in the industry with who may be involved in sync or maybe sync adjacent. So let's just kind of go through, starting with Pepe, and kind of talk about where you are right now. What percentage of what you're doing would you say is related to sync, and then what areas maybe outside that you work with? I know Koichi talks about production, and An is talking about kind of brand management. And so where are you in this, Pepe?
Well, I would say the majority of what I'm doing with What Up Pitches is for sync. So not only are we creating our own music, the three of us, but we are also reaching out to indie artists all the time. We look for people who have great music that might not have sync representation, and then we're constantly networking with music supervisors, also to see who we can help, who we haven't talked to yet, who might need our kind of music. And so it's an always changing situation with that. And you never know what's going to happen. You never know when you're going to get a brief you have 3 or 4 hours to come up with something, or sometimes maybe it's you get a little bit longer time and there's a custom project involved. So yeah, that's sort of how our day-to-day looks.
Awesome. And now, Pepe, I remember you also released not too long ago a solo project. How often do you get to focus on something like that while you're juggling these things as an independent artist?
Thank you for asking a very good question, because it was so difficult for me to release that one single, because with all my daily activities and the producing, it was really hard to fit that in. And there's, like I was saying, there's always an emergency that you have to take care of. So you really have to carve out these spaces to do your own project. So I was planning at the beginning of the year to do like one single every 2 months, and so far I have done 0. So I clearly need to start carving out a little bit more time, because you guys know what it's like, right? All of you.
I'm in the exact same position right
yeah,
now.
so
like trying to get a project out, but working on briefs and just working sync plans, and it's very challenging. I find it very challenging.
I'd love to know what you guys do to make it all fit, find that balance, because that's a really tough thing.
Yeah, I think Daraj probably has a cool perspective, but I think also being um, an artist who has chosen to focus on sync, that probably um, helps. Would you say that, Daraj? That because the stuff that you're doing is also for your projects, and it's also for so it's not like a separate thing. Is that made it helpful?
Yeah, kind of. I think that, when I made that pivot, it just got prioritized in that way. And so I'm used to kind of the traditional artist release process, I guess. And so, I feel like with Pepe as well, like, to her credit, she's, part of an agency that's, has many responsibilities and many moving parts. You know, I don't. I'm only curating my own catalog, at least at this point. So I think kind of some of those time management differences are there, but I know I've gotten to the process of just prioritizing, like, you know, output. Like I'm writing every day, and I'm also trying to create releases for the public for my front end brand because it helps me. You know, my Instagram almost becomes like a business card in a sense, so I try to keep content on it as much as I can.
That is great. Koichi, how do you where do you fall in this? Are you 100% devoted on sync? And like you did say you work with like artists as well. So where does your time, how does the split occur and then how do you balance it?
I guess for me it would be more like, honestly, it's probably about like 70% sync based because, like I said, a lot of times if I'm working with a library, I try to go into that situation not really working on one song or two songs, but I'm going to negotiate like an album. So I know that requires a decent chunk of time where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to be stuck in the studio for the next 2 months working on these 10 songs, or like in my case, a lot of times it's these 10 pieces of music. So that side of my job tends to be more instrumental based. And then, as Pepe mentioned, I'll also get the occasional custom call, which, you know, those are fun because it almost always starts with, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I know what's about to happen, so I'm like, I've got 24 to 48 hours to knock something out. But I've also, I mean, and there was towards the end of last year, I was trying to ironically put out like a lo-fi beat tape artist-driven producer project. I guess I don't know what you would call that, but my issue, and thankfully so, I guess to a certain extent, was I was like, cool, I think I have enough for an album, and then I kind of got stuff getting poached for either some artist projects or for some smaller licensing things, and I'm like, okay, well now I don't have an album, so it is always a balance. I mean, even for me with the artist projects that come in now, a lot of times that will be the starting conversation, right? If I'm catching up with people, or if they're new people, so much more, I think, attention is being paid to the sync space itself that, you know, those introductions will eventually end, and then it's kind of like, all right, cool, like, are you trying to do something? Like, they'll be like, oh, hey, are you familiar with like sync writing versus an artist-based project? Like, did you want to do one or the other? And so I think it's in the mind of so many people these days, whichever side of the glass that you're on, kind of. So
Very cool. And so like you're at the other extreme because you're artist focused, brand focused, and as you're developing, promoting, marketing, you know, building relationships for your artists, is sync up to this point, has it been part of the formula in terms of ways to market her music, or is that something totally separate right now?
So I have a to-do list, a very long list of things we are doing and want to do. And I hate to admit that sync is definitely on it. We're working on getting the singles out and building the brand and narrative around her first, and then hoping to get the music out there. So we have a couple of songs that we earmarked that we specifically want for certain shows that are very difficult to get. And it's a matter of getting the buzz around her, because as an indie artist, I think the focus should be getting the narrative out there. I'm very much a huge supporter of storytelling, and getting people to know who the artist is. Because once you get the buzz out and you get people talking about it, you don't know who else might know of a new supervisor, who else might know of a project that's going on that could fit with the music that your artist makes. And so we've already gotten kind of a good buzz going around. She's very active on the socials. TikTok has been amazing. She has had so many opportunities just off of TikTok alone, from performances, from brand partnerships, and we're hoping to add sync to that list. I don't know if there's any supervisors scouring TikTok for that, but in terms of sync, it's definitely up there on that list. And now that we've gotten good press out, we've gotten playlist recognition, we've gotten radio, we're starting to have that conversation around sync placements for her.
also, Anna's gonna be biased, but Twee's music is fire. So like, just
Thank
shout
you.
out right there, real quick. Like,
Appreciate it. Yes, please check her out. Her link is in my bio. She's a Vietnamese American artist from the Bay Area. Is coming out with an EP later this year. I'll be like completely honest. The next single that's coming out on Friday, not this Friday, next Friday. It's called In My Bag, and I'm trying really hard to get it placed into Insecure. And I know that Insecure is a top, target for many. But I think the song and the narrative around it would go really well with the type of music that Issa and the music directors have placed on there.
Actually, that brings me to a really great point on. I want to open this up to the whole panel to how much. A couple questions in one here. You brought up TikTok, and the whole music being kind of open to everybody situation. How much do you think TikTok and Rembrandt? I'd love for you especially to weigh in on this, but we'll start with On and then move to Rembrandt. How much do you think TikTok and social media has opened up the opportunity for AAPI artists and new artists to be included in the conversation?
Oh, 100%, maybe even more. At first, I will say I was, and I wouldn't say non-believer, but I was a little hesitant about TikTok because of, different things like security and then, the age. But as we can see from the past year, it's just broken so many artists. And in terms of API and more diversity, I mean, all you have to really look at is Bella Porch right now, who has just, knocked it out of the park with her most recent release. I think she's signed to Warner. And she just killed it off of the video that she made. And I think that opens the conversation about when there's one thing where the industry people, quote unquote, people who, have worked in the industry as an executive, the quote unquote gatekeepers, approve of your music and give you the chance to be marketed. Whereas TikTok, they put that power into the fans itself. My artist had a song that went viral last year. On TikTok, and that kind of jump started things. And she wasn't as active as she is now. And that song is having a third resurgence just starting Sunday, just off of being on TikTok. And so you can kind of control the narrative around that. And then the other thing too is I feel like TikTok fans are way more active than any other social media, and TikTok is the only social media that I can see where they actually translate to streams.
I love that. And Rem, I want to take this to you, and just for the room to know, part of the reason I asked Rembrandt in here as a co-host, or we did tonight, is because Rembrandt is a communications master. He's being very modest when he says, I just do some, of the things that he does. He's been in it for a really long time, adjacent to our industries and deep in our industry. And one of the reasons that we were inspired to do this room was because Rembrandt was hosting a room on more serious topics surrounding the AAPI community and brought our attention to things that we weren't even thinking about, including being the term that I had never heard before in our room is about transparency, which is model minority. I never knew that was a thing, meaning, how you can still be discriminated against and you can still feel terrible or be made to feel marginalized by stereotyping people, like such as Asians are good at music, right? Where that's a stereotype I'm sure we've all heard before. Every Asian can play the cello or can play piano or any of those things, and what those things do. So I want Rembrandt to speak on some of that because he's a real expert in this space, and I'd love to hear from you all after that, just to discuss, again, bringing it back to why it's important to have representation in music and why it's important to have rooms like these and discussions like these and the things that we're doing, to adjust those, barriers to entry for people. TikTok being a big, step forward in that respect. So Rem, somewhere in there was buried a question, but
I'm sure
can
it
I count on
was
you to help me
there.
out?
I'm sure it was less than 6 feet under, but I'm going to try to decipher and try to answer something. Um, I think what you said is absolutely true. I think, the model minority myth is loud and true in the AAPI community. Um, the stereotypes being, as Steph mentioned, being good at, classical music, like whether it be the cello or the violin or the piano, which I happen to play, And things like, oh, you're good at math, right? And I'm like, no. And you want to be a doctor, right? Well, my parents wanted me to be a doctor. I didn't. I wanted to be in entertainment. Um, but those are the things people don't understand, and a lot of non-minorities or other minorities think that we have it so easy because you guys are so smart, you guys are such hard workers, you guys are quiet, you guys are always following the rules. That's somewhat true to a point, but again, there, as we just all recognize in this room, they're stereotypes. So it doesn't apply to all, and a lot of things that maybe apply to a subset of AIPI doesn't apply to all. And I think that's the one thing that we don't talk about enough, is that there's so many different types of Asians, right? So, and we're all so very, very different. So to lump all of us, and say we're good at this one thing or many different things or whatever is just unfair. Um, you know, Growing up as a Filipino American in the Bay Area, obviously my experience is different from someone who is Chinese who grew up in San Francisco, or someone who is Vietnamese and grew up in San Jose, or someone who is Thai and grew up in New York. So I think we don't spend enough time like knowing the fact that there are so many different Asians. Specifically do because I was forced to, right? And because I'm part of this community, um, you know, I sought that out to learn about other Asians who I might not know enough about, like whether that be South Asians, Indians, or whatever, or people who are Pakistani, I just didn't have friends with. So I sought that out when I went to college and at Stanford and Berkeley. I was like, I want to meet other Asians that I might not, be familiar with. But I think people who are non-Asians should also want to do that as well. And it's hard, right? Because there's, again, like I'm pointing out to all of us here, is that there's so many different types of Asians, and all of our experiences are so very different. How we got into this country, like my parents came in here because of a third wave. I don't know if everyone who's Asian on stage, if that was their same journey here. But my father was an electrical engineer. My mother was a medical technologist, and so they asked them to come here from the Philippines or whatever because we were fighting like I guess the Cold War, and we had to compete with the Russians or whatnot. So that's how my parents came here, and that's how a lot of their friends came here who were doctors and engineers and whatnot. Um, but besides model minority, I think what's really important is that we take it upon ourselves to help one another. I find that a lot of people in the Asian American community, you know, besides what's happened in the past couple of months, is that we just didn't come together and help each other out. And I'm so proud of the community finally coming together and go like, you know what? Um, it's time. It's our turn to sort of like be loud and proud and make a difference. And so there's a lot of people in the community who are doing that, like and I hate the fact that we had to rally around uh, of situations that are awful that are happening in our community. But sometimes that's what it takes, right? BLM wouldn't happen if it wasn't for something that's an embarrassment to our country. And but we're I'm so happy that George Floyd didn't die in vain, right? And so all these people who have died in the AIP community, or got hurt, or got stabbed or beaten or whatever, let's not have their situation go down in vain either. um, so I'm just really, again, saying this again and again and again and again, but so proud that I think the community has finally gotten together, and people who can make a difference in the AI community is really doing that. I don't know if you guys saw the special that aired on MTV and I think other networks that digitally Unite. If you haven't seen it, please see it. It's called See Us Unite. And I think you can see it on YouTube. And I don't think she knows she's my mentor, but Sheila Marcelo is the executive producer of that. She founded a company, Filipina, a woman, care.com. So look at her if you guys want to do some research on Sheila and care.com. But there's been so much. I know Jason Ma and I forgot the rest of the people who were involved did that song. I'm forgetting the name of the song right now, but with Wyclef, and I'm forgetting the name of the rapper. I apologize. I'll remember in a second. But that song just premiered, I think, last week, and the music video just came out, and that's for to try to unite the Black and the Asian community, Black and Gold community, or whatever. But there's
Wait,
so much going on. Yeah,
Ram, I'm going to pause you because you're dropping
sure.
a lot of really amazing information that I want to make sure reaches our audience. One of which is you talked about having different types of people in the Asian community and different representation and not stereotyping that because, in the music community, and it's worth repeating in this room because we do have music supervisors I see in the audience and, just also other producers and musicians and such. I think one struggle that our industry has, not only just in sync, but in music in general, is lumping all of the groups together. And that individual representation is important. But also, you brought up something really interesting, which is, having the Black community and Asian community come together. And I thought it was really interesting, Alyssa, since I love you so much, allow me to spotlight you for a second, put you on the spot, more like it. Asian, I thought it was really interesting that Alyssa felt it important to qualify to the room, I'm also Asian. I don't think that we really truly understand what it's like, and if you don't mind speaking of it, to represent more than one group because you're Asian, you're Black, you're female, so Rembrandt, same thing. You happen to be Asian, you represent the LGBTQ community. There's everyone on this stage actually represents more than one, which is not typical of room nights like this. And I think that actually poses extra unique challenges. And it also, in addition, I think brings up a really important topic of allyship and things that we can do together, to help each other out. So, Alyssa, would you mind speaking on, that subject a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is kind of funny because this has been, I don't know if I would say a problem. Maybe it is a problem, but I would say it's something I've been faced with for a really long time, ever since I was younger. Because in college, I remember my freshman year going in and I got invited to the Black student overnight. And then I also got invited to the Asian student overnight. And I was like, well, I don't really know where I go, so I'm just not going to go anywhere. That's kind of been like a continuous narrative, even in the industry. It's like, okay, well, you're not really, well, I mean, you could be welcome in one area, but then in the other area, you may look less of that. So then you're not really welcome there. So it's like this weird a feeling of being classified before you can even, state who you are or even what you do. So it's something that I've found across the board. And again, it's just one of those things where we just need to be mindful about how we are classifying people before they've even had a chance to, say who they are, especially in music, and especially when you have submissions from people of, different backgrounds, and then you say, oh, they're only one thing, but there are plenty of mixed people out there, and it's something that I've heard from other mixed people as well, that they don't feel like they have a place because they're either too much of this or too little of that to be qualified as either.
I love that. Can you speak a little bit to some of the things that you have done to combat that in the industry, being a woman in the industry, being an Asian woman in the community, being a Black woman, being all the things that you are? Can you speak to some of the things, or even, I love, because I know that you've done this, use these more as superpowers, and how we can lean towards, using these as a positive force to make change within the industry?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and on one hand, sometimes I would say, let me actually rewind. So before, I was kind of shying away from saying I was, Black or Asian or whatever, because I felt like, well, I wouldn't be welcome in a certain arena because I am one or the other, right? But now I more so lean into it because it's something that within the past couple of years has been more accepted, right? And that's sad that is even like that, but that's just kind of how it's been. So leaning into it a bit more and being vocal about who I am when I am on panels or when I am speaking to students at schools or just doing any of those things, I think it's helpful to be vocal about what you are, because at that point you're not only just, stating a fact, but you're also showing people what's possible. So I would say definitely don't shy away from it, as I definitely did for so many years, but just really embracing who you are and being okay with saying, I'm on an AAPI panel or I'm on a Black panel, and just being okay with all of it.
Amazing. Pepe, I'd love to turn the mic back over to you for a moment, just because you split on both sides. One is, being a woman in sync is also very rare. We don't have gender parity, but also being an Asian woman in sync is a unique opportunity for, being an artist. What are the things that you do both as an artist and as a company, since you do have the ability to, kind of be the change, as we would say, within the community? What are there things that you do specifically as a company owner and an artist to make sure that you feel that you yourself and like Alyssa said, people that might feel represented by you have that place in our industry?
Yeah, it's really important to us as a company to really lift up underrepresented voices. So we regularly feature BIPOC people, female producers, and we're always looking for female producers too. Since I'm one, I'm always trying to meet other people that we can work with and feature, because it really is important. I love uh, what you just said about seeing this as a superpower, though. I see being an Asian female in an industry where we're so rare, that's a superpower. I feel like let's get out there and use that and be fabulous with it, instead of feeling like, oh no, there's only one of me in the room. So I feel like I I've been lucky because when I started out as a composer, I actually, this maybe sounds silly now, but I didn't realize that I was in such the minority. So I just kind of, I was young and brash, and this is what I wanted to do, and so I just did it. And now looking back on it and seeing that there is still such inequality, I don't really know how that happened, but I'm glad that I was able to take that route with it. And so I really want to help and support other women, other Asians who are coming up in the industry too, and see what I can do to help them and support them in whatever challenges they may be facing.
That's a good I think perspective, Pepe. Something you said kind of brought um, a question to mind because you were just so passionate about this pursuit, as a composer producer, not even realizing how unique it was, for a woman, and even a woman who's Asian to kind of be, and the representation that's there. I was curious, were there any, mentors or cheerleaders that you had kind of in your life that helped? Because it seems like you are kind of becoming that, in a way for, other composers, looking to be a part of this industry. Who is that for you? And I guess we could even open that up, to any of the other panelists as well. But what did that look like, Pepe, for you?
Well, I can think of a couple older white guys actually. Like there was one older composer who helped me out and gave me advice. There was a Pro Tools engineer who taught me a lot when I was starting out, and we're still friends today. And I still go to him with my tech questions. So I always looked at it then as like, wow, these guys they're really paying it forward. They're one of them actually said that to me. I think he gave me some samples at one point. He was like, "Don't tell anyone. I'm just going to give these to you." But just pay it forward when you are in a position to do so. So I thought that was really cool, and I've always kind of carried that with me. But I also want to touch on something else. This is from something that Rembrandt said earlier about the stereotypes and how there are so many different kinds of Asians, obviously. But there's one, I mean, there are many ways that I'm a walking stereotype. I'm Chinese and I started playing classical piano when I was 4. So when I tell people that, they often will say, oh, yeah, well, you're Chinese. Your parents made you, right? They always make you play an instrument. But it wasn't like that at all. Because I'm not from China or Hong Kong. I'm actually from Southeast Asia. So my culture is mixed in that way too. And where we were, which was the tiny country of Brunei, it really wasn't the thing to give your kids classical lessons. What happened was my cousin was taking piano lessons, and I used to just sit next to her and be fascinated, and I was obsessed with it. And I begged my parents to let me have lessons. So anyway, I feel like that whole stereotype of oh your family made or your parents made you do it, it diminishes from our individuality because I feel like music has always been something that came to me early in life, and it felt like I was supposed to be doing it. It wasn't anything that anyone made me. And that's just one small example. I'm sure everyone on this panel has examples that they can share about that too. But it just felt like that was something I wanted to touch on.
I'm glad you did because I think that was what I couldn't get out before. It's not just even the stereotype of that. What carries over from that stereotype into the music industry is an assumption that you can only make one kind of music. So someone will look at you and say, okay, well, obviously you're really good in classical music, so I'm going to come to you for classical music, making that assumption, but then taking it one step further and not coming to you for saying, can you do a pop song? Can you do a rock song? I mean, this is a challenge we have with my Black songwriting partner. She often gets briefs for hip hop, but I'm like, she can write anything. So I think our industry is really bad about stereotyping that way in, saying, okay, well, I look at a person and this is the kind of music they make because of this. And, because I'm a woman, I can only write about pink things and flowers and whatever girls talk about, things like that. See, I don't even know. But I think that's a really important thing that you and Rembrandt just brought up.
That is great. I want to go back to what Daraj had. Well, let's go back. I would love to hear back on the mentoring question from Koichi and on who were there people that as you came in, was there anyone in particular who either took your hand or guided you along, or if you didn't feel like you were doing something trailblazing, but was there a mentor or people or group that helped you kind of find the way to where you are now? Koichi or
I'll start, I guess. I mean, on the composition side of things, or at least, I mean, I'll kind of equate that nowadays, I guess, to production library. But even for me, I had, ironically, I'm happy to call him a mentor. I think a lot of times whenever we think mentor, it's someone that's older than you. This is actually someone who's a year younger than me. We grew up together. And we bought same as Pepe. I played piano since I was 4. So did he. We came up through the same teachers, same programs. He went to Berklee College of Music. I went to USC. I went for music industry. He went for composition. My plan was never even to be on the creative side. I was like, that's all I've done with my life. So I wanted to switch it up. But TLDR, I'm still here. But he was the one who kind of it was an interesting. I mean, he's Japanese as well. He's full Japanese, and he had reached out to me because he was like, "Hey, I'm doing production library music," and I didn't know what that was at the time, but he'd explained it to me, and he was like, "I'm already writing for he was a ghostwriter on some TV shows, and he said my main client is starting to realize that I'm using a bunch of the same drum loops from stylists. Can you help me out?" He's like, "Are you still making beats?" Because in his mind, I wasn't the classical film composer kind of type of person, which honestly I wasn't at the time. But he was like, "I know you've sent me some stuff before. Are you still doing that? Can I hire you on to do this stuff?" And then that led to him kind of remembering. He's like, "Oh yeah, we all kind of came up together. You didn't go through the same programs I did, but we're not trying to change the world in terms of what we were doing at the time." He's like, "Do you want to kind of write with me?" And then he showed me the ropes, and that's honestly allowed me to have the career in that space that I have now, because he was the one that was kind enough to open a lot of doors for me, and his name already had weight in the space. And I've done I've done the best I can too to bring the people that I wanted to bring into the space and kind of help them out as well. So that would be on that side. And then for, I guess, more on the the beats and the production side of things, it would be Tommy Coster Jr., who, when I met him at the time, was kind of wrapping up stuff for Dre and Eminem and had worked on a lot of those records as the keyboard player. His dad is a prominent jazz musician, and I remember going to his studio and being nervous as hell to just hit space bar, but he's like, play me something, and so I did. And he gave me a very, like, what I consider is always a good answer. He like nodded his head and he was like, these would be competitive. And I was like, that's all I wanted to hear. Thank you. Like, so, and that definitely lit a fire under my ass to kind of keep on doing the stuff I do in that space. But yeah, that would be probably the two main things that I can think of. And then a bunch of small things along the way. I feel like we're always kind of learning in our space anyways. If you're kind of being a pro in the creative space, I mean, you're never really done learning. So hopefully someone's kind enough to always teach you something, or you're smart enough to ask as well. So
Very cool. What about you, An?
Yeah, in terms of a mentor, I don't think I had any specific mentor who guided me. But instead I followed leaders who I admired and just studied the shit out of what they did. So they were mentors in my eyes. They just didn't know I was, following their career. I had a network of peers who I always, talk shop with, and, we help each other out. But in terms of a mentor, I didn't have one. I wanted one. But funny enough, I had applied to a mentorship program from an artist manager whose career I just followed and really admired, and her name is Lola Plaku, and she used to be French Montana's manager, and she is very much giving and invested in giving back to women creatives, and so she held a mentorship program, and that's when I started to transition into management, and I actually didn't end up getting into her application, which was okay, but a year later, she reached out to me and actually told me I had the best application, but I couldn't get in because she's based and funded by Canada. So to get that recognition was really nice, but it also made me realize that, like, you kind of have to work with what you have. I didn't have any people who I thought I could reach out to, but I think when you don't have that work, try to be resourceful and kind of read the industry trades, pick out who you might want to reach out to, and if you can reach out to them, that would be great. But if not, just study them. And I think the programs that people put out now, like the one that she did, is really helpful. So if you can get in touch with one of those programs to connect with people, I think it's a great path forward for people trying to get started.
That's that's great advice. Let me ask this question, because you brought this up once before, on, and I want to. Well, you talking about touring and kind of having an indie artist and all the efforts that you guys were putting in towards TikTok. So I'm wondering from you, but then I also want I'll kind of direct the questions to the others, or redirect. But with the kind of the light opening up, I hear a lot more artists talking about looking forward to shows. Do you feel like in your own strategizing with Tweed, with your artists, do you feel like are you guys in things are opening back up mode? Is live shows coming into the discussion, or have the things that happened in this past year with TikTok blowing up and everything, has that totally shifted the perspective on where you're going to focus your energy?
Yeah, no, definitely. Touring is a huge conversation. So my artist, even though this last year had amazing strides due to TikTok and just being really active on building her brand, she started making music 5 to 6 years ago. So with the advent of social media, it kind of just was a tipping point for her. But we are having conversations. I'm reaching out to friends of mine who work at WME to see about representation, to get her to start touring over the pandemic, she went on a virtual college tour. So the college route is definitely one that you can kind of explore if you don't have representation. And because Thuy is Vietnamese American, and she's, you know, Vietnamese American, you know, not only making music but specifically in the R&B space, she is a rare artist, and she has been kind of the unofficial VSA spoken, and VSA is Vietnamese Student Union, and you'll find one on almost every campus. So we got reached out to so many universities. She performed, I think, maybe 10 shows over the course of the pandemic. And we called it a virtual college tour. And she's just a role model to so many students in the college market. They're just such great fans that we're definitely planning on what's ahead. I know 2022 is going to be a big year for touring and live shows as everybody kind of gets back on the books. In my conversation with my friend who's an agent, she just signed 10 artists. And so while they love Thuy, it's like she hasn't put out an EP yet. So we're going to see, you know, how the EP goes later this year, and then continue the conversation. So it's a matter of planting the seeds now to open the conversation for next year.
That is great. So from that, shifting from that perspective, Pepe or Koichi, like, do you see, and even Rembrandt jump in, but do you see any shift in your, like, you made a shift in your businesses in the last year, you know, whether it's from pitching to people through Zoom as opposed to meeting them directly. But now that things are shifting, have you seen any shift back? How is your business outlook being affected by things potentially opening back up? Let's start with Pepe, if you have any thoughts there.
Sure. I'm not sure if, you know, as far as the pitching side of it, we're not seeing huge changes, but I do hope that as production starts to get back up to speed, that we'll see more shows in production and briefs that we can submit to. But yeah, I wouldn't say we're seeing a huge change yet.
Koichi, anything in terms of number of briefs you're seeing, or the types of briefs, or anything changing from say 2019 to 2020 to right now?
I mean, I, I mean, obviously, yeah. There's a little bit of a ramp up in briefs as you know, everyone's kind of uh, back to kind of normal output, and including all the cousin industries to music, which allow us to, you know, to pitch for shows and whatnot. But the most telling one for me is probably just the fact that I finally now have a lot of the collaborators that you know, that I've been lucky enough to write with in person, you know, kind of be back to writing in person as opposed to having to only do Zoom, or, you know, just not working together at all, kind of a thing, you know. So now people in Nashville are like, oh, hey, I'm coming in, you know, in June. Like, people from Atlanta, I'm coming in July. So that alone, I mean, I think is pretty telling. And I've seen people from LA kind of like dip out and go do the work wherever they need to do it as well. So
Very true, very true. I'm actually going to be in LA in June, and I'm very excited about it. My first actual trip. It's really cool. Awesome, awesome. So maybe this is a good time for a reset, Daraj, and then we can see Alyssa or Rembrandt after the reset. If you have any questions you want to take, feel free at that point, and then we can also open it up to the audience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So good evening. Welcome everybody to Control Camp. We are a community built for and by independent artists. I'm one of your hosts, Raj. Joining me are my co-hosts, Eric Campbell and Steph Fink. And we just appreciate you being here, you know, on this night. We host rooms every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we like to interview industry guests and talk about how you can get your music into TV and film. And so if you want to get to know more about us and all of the resources that we have available, go ahead and swing over to controlcamp.com. And also, if you stepped into the conversation late, we do have replays available of our past rooms, and that includes this room as well. So this talk will be up live on our website, controlcamp.com. So make sure you stay tuned. And if you haven't already, be sure to tap the greenhouse at the top and follow our club to be notified about every new room that we host. And this probably be a good time to let you know as well. After our normal talk this evening, we typically go for around 2 hours. We've already reached the top of the hour, so we'll be here up until 7 PST, 10 EST. And after that, we like to do what we call our after party. So it's a less moderated room. Come hang out with us. We talk everything but music, and so it's a really relaxed environment. So if you want to get to know us a little bit more, be sure to swing by. But I mention that because it's for members only. So if you aren't following the club, make sure you do now, and you'll see it appear in your hallway after this room ends. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah, so today's camp discussion, we've been doing something in light of AAPI Heritage Month, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to meet some of the top AAPI pros in the music industry. And, as we're continue this conversation, we just remind you, if there's anybody, you think might be, may benefit from this dialogue and this conversation we're having, go ahead and ping them into the room, and share the knowledge that's coming forth. These are really, really reputable and noteworthy individuals in their space, and have a really amazing track record. So it's a lot of wealth here on the stage. And with that being said, I want to kick it back over to you, Eric and Steph.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, we've got plenty of questions on my list that we can go into, but I want to give Rembrandt or Alyssa a chance to ask some questions, and I also want to open it up to the floor if there are any questions from there. But let's start with Alyssa or Rembrandt.
Yes, hi everyone. I would actually just love to hear more from just Pepe about, your process in terms of finding new Asian American artists.
Well, at the moment, there isn't a specific process except just to keep my eyes peeled. So I'm definitely going to look up Tui, but if you guys have recommendations, I would love to hear about them. I'm always looking for new great music.
That's an
But
amazing
that's
question, Pepe. That's a question I'd love to pose to the room. Alyssa, Rembrandt, Koichi, on Pepe. I would love any. We've done this for other rooms too. Recommendations on artists on the rise or artists to check out, both in sync and just in general music of Asian artists that we should be on the lookout that we might not know of yet.
Yeah, I feel like there's this girl, she's up and coming. She's a Filipina American, and she's gotten a lot of press lately. Her name is Olivia Rodrigo. So if you haven't heard of her, please take a look. I think she's number one at the moment. But yeah, she's my favorite at the moment.
If she just
There's
dropped her full
another-
album.
Our
Never
guy
heard of
Dan
her.
mixed her
Just kidding.
That was / sarcasm right there.
It really was. So if you guys didn't sense that, I apologize on behalf of my entire
Oh, good.
Reverend, that was amazing.
Alyssa, what about you? Do you have any recommendations of artists on the rise? Or artists that we
Yes.
might not know about who are already famous?
Yeah, there is one artist named Audrey Nuna who's been on my radar for a bit, and she's actually been doing really well. She's got millions of streams now, but I don't know where she's at right now. I think she may be independent, but that's what she was the last time I checked.
Could you
say
repeat
that
her
again?
name for us? Yeah, exactly.
Yes, Audrey, Audrey, and then last name N as in Nancy, U, N as in Nancy, A.
And before we continue this, I'm just going to start saying we're going to open the floor to questions soon. So if you want to begin, we'll turn hand raising on and you can queue up while we're kind of continuing this, and then we'll start to bring you guys to the stage. And one more thing to point out before you start asking questions is while we have these experts in the room, especially, and also Rembrandt too, even though they're co-hosting, Rembrandt and Alyssa, open up questions for them too, just because these are both professionals that I turn to frequently, and they're both very expensive and difficult to get time with. So I would have a lot of questions, especially in certain topics of like Rembrandt is a, kind of branding. Well, not kind of. He is a branding expert. He's also an expert in events and things like that. So as the world opens up and artists are doing their things, and these are sort of the topics that we've been discussing in our kind of camp calls of maybe sync adjacent opportunities that we want to start bringing into the room. I want to open those, subjects up too. So, okay, back to the first question at hand. Koichi, anybody you want to put on our radar?
I mean, Alyssa, I'm like, I was about to be like, Audrey is dope, and there goes that one. But
Perfect.
I'll double co-sign that for sure. Let me think. A lot of women in the R&B space, I guess. So like Joyce Rice, also dope, from LA. Umi, also from LA.
They're both Malaysian too.
Yep, that as well. And Japanese breakfast, super cool in the indie space. Shoot, I feel like I probably have some more. Maybe we can do like a follow-up doc on it or something, and we can all just like send a bunch of good people to follow, or make a Spotify playlist. There's some good Spotify playlists for this actually. I got to give them some credit as well for putting some of those together. So.
Yeah, hit us up. I'm going to give Abby, who's in the second row, followed by the speakers, as our new intern, and she is taking copious notes on tonight's topic, so we can curate a list of really great artists. And I love that because I know of one music supervisor already who heard a name in our Women's Month who is now featuring someone. I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but learned of an artist in our room for a really big sync. So I love this question now, and I can't wait to put it into action more. So we'll get a list and we'll put that up on our Patreon, and we'll make sure it gets up on our site. On PayPay, how about you guys?
So of course I'm going to say Tui, as Mary introduced.
Yeah.
She's definitely on the rise. Check out her music. But also wanted to mention somebody, or a group actually, that just got a lot of attention on them lately, which is the Linda Lindas. If you haven't already heard of this viral sensation, they are a young girl punk group. I think they're between 10 and 16, and they just are killing it with their latest performance that went viral at the library of all things. So check those out. Those girls are amazing. The messaging is amazing. Yeah, Google the Linda Lindas.
That's awesome. Some great people to look up. Appreciate that. I would quick follow up, just if you have. I'd also be interested in just other people on the business side that we may not be aware of in the AAPI community, with executives, supervisors, managers. Any names that we may want to have in follow up rooms? If you have any referrals.
Brian Nguyen.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he's already he's family. That's the sarcasm again. I'm not catching that tonight.
My bad. I was like, where is? I'm about to text him. Wait, let me think. Producers, Francis Got Heat out of Canada. Dope Vietnamese producer. I should have more. Hold on. Like, tag someone else going.
Well, that's okay. I was just curious. If you do, I would love to know names. You can always DM us names and stuff. But let's shift. I have while we're at this place, I want to take this opportunity. We've got a lot of questions. We've been talking culturally, but I also want to not miss the opportunity to kind of get to know all of you and know your journeys, of kind of what got you here. So, what I want to know, primarily, from you three, Pepe, Koichi, on, I want to tell me about any one of you or all of you. I want to know an epic moment kind of in your music journey. Like, you've all had these really cool experiences. So I want to hear something like that you would consider like one of the highs of your journey, whether it was a particular placement or an award or just an experience. Share something with us, please.
Okay, I'll go. A few years ago, I scored my first narrative feature film. And up until then, I had scored TV shows and documentaries, but I had always wanted to do something narrative. So the film that I scored was called MDMA, and it was a Chinese American female director, and it was a semi-autobiographical story about how she got into Stanford and paid her way through by getting into the chem lab and manufacturing MDMA and selling it. So, yeah. So I was so excited that not only was this my first scripted feature, but also that I got to tell a story about this non-model minority Asian. And when I went to the premiere, it was just I was sitting there in this beautiful theater in San Francisco and thinking, oh my God, it really happened. Like this was my dream, and I just kept working towards it, and it really happened. So that was a special moment for me.
That is amazing and so awesome. Wow.
Can I see this movie somewhere? Like, this sounds dope. I need to watch this.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it is still streaming on Showtime.
Dope.
Yeah, so check it out. There's also there's another movie called MDMA. So you just want to make sure that it's got the one with the the Asian lady on the cover.
It sounds like one of the girls from Better Luck Tomorrow just grew up and like kept on going and just like boom.
That is so cool. Any other highlights anyone wants to share?
Jump in here. First of all, congrats on that. It sounds amazing. And for me, I've been honored to be involved with the Broad Museum for a couple years, and that's the art museum here in Los Angeles. And I was able to produce their Soul of a Nation celebration in 2019, right before the pandemic. So it was just a wonderful event celebrating Soul of a Nation exhibition, and we've done quite a few partnerships since then, including the recent series on Basquiat for their new opening.
That is so cool. Wow, so when when was the exhibit, or is that ongoing?
So the Soul of a Nation exhibition was in 2019. So that's a traveling exhibit. And so it's now at another museum. But it was there for maybe 6 months or so. But now the Basquiat exhibition is there.
That's very cool. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Cool. And I saw you flash, Koichi, so I don't want to pass you over if you had something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess mine would just be, I don't know, like I always tell people, it's funny when people ask like, oh, hey, is there one musical thing that stands out, right? Because I've done everything from write like a pop song in a broom closet, all the way to like getting to work on a scoring stage, you know. And honestly, when you go home, they're all kind of dope if you had a good time in them. I mean, they really are all cool, but the first time I got to like record an orchestra and hear them write play what I wrote, and like, you know, the actual so this is my buddy TK who was kind enough to bring me in on like an orchestral session, and I was like, hey, I don't really do this, you know. He's like, dude, you don't have to write anything crazy, just write some like easy pretty stuff. I know you know how to do it, do the thing, I'll back you up. I was like, tight, okay, we'll do it. And then so to be able to kind of take that from MIDI notes in a studio off my laptop and then show up at East West, or no, this was actually at the Village on their stage, and then being able to like meet an orchestra and have, you know, the conductor go, oh, hey, here's the guy who wrote the stuff, and everyone's like, hey, great job. I mean, that was a pretty dope moment for sure, and I don't get to do those that often, so it kind of like it sticks in your memory for sure. So yeah, that would be mine.
That is so cool. That's very cool. Cool. I did have a follow up to that, but
I saw On flash, and I didn't want to
oh,
move
I'm
too quick.
sorry.
On,
Thank you, An.
do you have
No,
anything?
go ahead and finish, and then I can go after.
No, go ahead, An. I didn't see you flash. I'd love to hear your story.
Oh, I mean, I guess the milestone I would say is just really currently everything that I'm doing with Twee. I feel like I'm living it now because I kind of put it out there in the universe that I wanted to work with women, female artists, especially female artists of color. So when I connected with somebody who is also Vietnamese American like myself, and also from the Bay Area, it's just one of those things where it's like, what are the chances? And so getting her out there and getting more people just familiar with her story and where she's come from has really meant a lot to her and to myself. And I'm very intentional about building kind of like a female team around her, from her agent to her publicist. So really, really enjoying that. I guess like I loved what I did at Universal, but I definitely feel like I'm making more of an impact in this role in that way.
I have a question for you, An. How did you two actually meet?
A mutual connection, actually. Somebody who I had met off of Clubhouse. And so Twee and I actually met during the pandemic. We're pandemic buddies.
Very cool.
That
Power
is
Clubhouse.
power. That's actually really awesome.
I'm going to take a second to butt in here to introduce Michelle Liu, who's on stage. Michelle is a pal of ours who is an amazing Asian executive, also obviously Asian and female, just like we talked about before, kind of crosses both paths. And the reason why I bring that up is because Michelle is an executive who is helping us with our initiative, which we're going to roll out next year. We're in beta with her company, which she works for The Rock over at $7. And when we brought up our desire to start, creating opportunities for women and BIPOC creators, Michelle brought it to her bosses over at $7. We had a conference call with them, and then immediately, I would say within an hour of the phone call, they had a brief and a gig on our desk, which Eric actually won for them for Zoa, the energy drink. So, I think Michelle is a really great shining example of how, one community can help, one underrepresented community can, or two underrepresented communities can help others and be a part of that change. So I wanted to give Michelle her flowers. And Michelle, if you want to just introduce yourself quickly, since no one knows you on this stage.
Hi guys, thanks Steph for the intro and nice to meet you virtually, Eric.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, yeah, so cool that you made the score and for the spot and everything. Yeah, but I work for $7 under Dwayne Johnson, so we work on everything with consumer products, so whether it be Zoa or Terramana Tequila and the movies coming out. So Jungle Cruise, Red Notice, Black Adam with all the different studios and just really working on the creative, but also I've been trying to get more diversity and inclusion into all of our projects and like working with independent contractors instead of like through different agencies. So yeah, nice to meet all of you. And my background is more in entertainment. I started off my career at Lionsgate.
That is great. Well, nice to meet you again, and welcome to the stage. Glad to have you here. And we want to
Thanks. Yeah, of course.
we want to shout out Jessica, who's our regular, and who also linked us up with On, and just who took a part and interest in this event from the very beginning and shouted it out. What's up, Jess?
Hey, thanks for just bringing me up and just to say hey.
Always glad to have you and your support. And what's up, Matt? See you on the stage. Always good to see you.
Good to see you too, Eric. How's it going?
Doing real good. And I want to make sure. I had a follow-up question, but I want to make sure that. Well, Matt, I want you to introduce yourself, but also, did you have a question for someone on the stage, or I didn't want to overlook it if you did.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll start by introducing myself real quick. But yeah, I'm Matt. I'm a film and TV composer. As of last week, a music supervisor too, kind of doing a little bit of that. Seems interesting, and I've been a fan of many of Music Supervisor for a couple of years. So it's an interesting world, and just wanted to learn more about it. And an opportunity came up. Um, but yeah, no, I was curious to kind of just ask a general question about mentorship, and if anyone on the stage, I think it's difficult with API pros and music, because I feel like, at least for me and for some of my Asian friends growing up in New York City, there's a lot of role models in terms of doctors and lawyers, obviously, and I think a lot of our parents like to push us towards those kinds of career paths, mostly because that's what they might see or know, and you don't see that many Asian composers or music producers or you know Asian people working in music, really like represented on screen or in magazines or anything. So I was curious if anyone here has any Asian mentors or role models in the music space.
Open that to the floor.
Hold on for 1 second, because I have a plane flying over my head. All right, chill out, plane. Goodness. What up, Matt? Always good to see you. I mean, at least for me, like I kind of touched on it before, in that, like, I agree. I didn't have I'm growing up, even knowing about the spaces that we're in, right? Like, I feel like is pretty foreign to, at least for me, being a third culture kid and Asian for the most part in upbringing. I would say, like, I didn't know that composition or being paid for music was even really a thing. It was something I studied my whole life. But looking at it now, I mean, as far as mentors or people to help you come through, I mean, I don't know if there's particular names that come out producer-wise, like in the hip-hop space, like Ramon Ibanga Jr., who goes by Illmind, is doing a lot of big stuff these days, both still in production as well as on the NFT and kind of pushing the tech space forward. I think it's, at least if I was again, like, so composer side, like Takeshi Furukawa, who's my friend, I think is a great example of someone. I think the tough part sometimes can be like, like, I don't know if I would consider anything that I've done to help someone, not necessarily like mentorship. Like, I think even just defining that to be like, is someone a mentee because you're constantly spending regular time with a plan and like, this is what we're going to do, versus like, oh, hey, like, I'll help you out because I was you once. You know what I mean? Like, but no matter what, I mean, you can DM me directly, or I have your number so we can just chat about it. But there's folks out there. I think there's someone for everyone currently. That's what's cool nowadays, is that I think because of the socials and whatever your opinion might be on the TikToks or the Instagrams of the world and whatnot, there is just a lot more visibility now, and we're seeing a lot of people succeed or certainly just kind of start to bubble up. I mean, Thui's a great example from the artist perspective, and I wouldn't even have known that she had a fellow Asian female Vietnamese manager in On, which is dope. So, I mean, just learning these things that I just learned today will hopefully allow me to continue to kind of find some ways to connect dots for people and be the next step for them.
Very cool. And Matt, don't want to overlook it. I think it's really cool. I mean, you've done so much as a composer and with placements, and now to have a supervisor opportunity, I think that's really, really cool. So congratulations for that. I hope it's exciting. You come back and kind of share what you're finding with that.
For sure, yeah, it's a very social role, so plays well for me.
Cool. Okay, I wanted to so we just talked a second ago about kind of the high moments in the industry. I would also love to hear, and this is kind of for our audience's benefit, and we've done this in other rooms, if just any situation in your career that may have been a struggle, or you kind of came against some adversity, but then you actually overcame it or came through it. Would anybody like to share that moment in the industry for the benefit of those who are listening, whatever you feel like sharing? Moment of adversity in the industry that you met and overcame.
This may not be a specific story about overcoming something, but I will say I was faced
And actually, not that long ago, with a conversation from somebody who basically said, we just have different dynamics because I'm a male and you're a female, and we have power and you don't, in those very, very explicit, terms. And it was one of those things where I just really got to the point of realizing, you know, I don't need to work with you. And I think that's something that we don't necessarily give ourselves permission to do, because we feel like, oh, well, we have to work with this person, or they have leverage. But you know what? At the end of the day, if they're treating you a certain way, you don't need to work with them, and they don't deserve to work with you.
I think that is a massively important. Koichi, where's your air horn? Come on.
My bad.
I feel like what she said needs to be on a plaque, because I 100% co-sign that.
Unfortunately, right?
It's so cool. Was it Steph? So I feel like last week, from a business perspective, not from a personal perspective, but we were having a similar discussion about how just because, a client is paying so much, or the gig has so much money on the table, that we need to start looking more at, is this actually a good relationship? Is this something that's actually feels good to work with? And so from a different perspective, um, I think that's a great reminder that we need to continue to hear that, a part of us, feels like, opportunities, we come from the scarcity mindset, there's only so many opportunities. And if we don't take the one that comes, even if it doesn't feel good, that we're going to lose out. And so I appreciate you sharing that, Alyssa. The more we hear of people saying, no, it's okay to, not work with someone, or not work with a company, or not work with a particular situation that doesn't feel good, or that's not, treating you the way you deserve to be treated. It's a really good reminder.
Yeah, I think we were talking about that last week, and I think that's super critical too. And I will share with you, and for those of you who don't know in the room, Alyssa's actually our manager at Music Box, and my manager, and we've had a lot of conversations around this specific topic lately about pushing back and saying no. And like Eric said, I think it's really scary to say, oh, we come from a place of scarcity, and we're all, in these underrepresented communities. And is it better to kind of our question is always, is it better to just get in and get this job and try to get represented? Sorry, loud. Sorry, big motorcycles going by. Is it more important to get these jobs, or is it important to, stay true to who we are and say no to this job so that these larger companies create fairer deals? And, Alyssa's always on my side. She's always pushing, maybe to our lawyer chagrin. Sometimes we push a little harder, and we've been very willing to say no, about gigs that we really, really want to do. And I'm happy to report that even the largest company, corporation wise, that we were dealing with, studio wise, in partnership with them, I had a conversation with a producer today, and I said, look, I don't want to be that pain in the ass who you don't want to deal with before we even start. And she said, you know what, for the first time, and she also happens to be a Black female, she said, for the first time, I'm happy to hear someone, kind of push back to our big corporate attorneys, because their contracts have been so bad for so long that sometimes it's just a matter of language getting, forward. And it takes this kind of saying no and putting your foot down about it in order to create that change. And got kicked up to the president of the company. It got kicked up to the top of legal, and it caused a whole ruckus. But at least us on the production team, we get why you did it, and we're grateful. So I was always afraid of that, but having people like Alyssa hearing things like this, I want to say that out loud, because will it always work? I don't know. Maybe some people are going to be like, forget it, we don't want to work with you, Steph, because you're fighting too hard for things we don't want to give your creators. But at the end of the day, I think it's about being able to look at yourself in the mirror and feel okay with who you are.
Preach.
I love
I
it.
have to say, Alyssa too. Alyssa, for us, I was also like, forget being a woman in this industry, I don't want to talk about it. And it wasn't until I was working with Alyssa, or even, um, kind of mentoring Alyssa when she was still an intern 7-8 years ago, that I was like, I don't want to talk about who was saying that earlier. It was Pepe. I love that you were like, I didn't recognize that we're kind of just like, we got to just put our heads down and go. We're going to do this and we're going to own it and we're going to go. Why do I have to, say a specific thing? Until Alyssa was like, hey, representation matters. And she kind of shook me a little, and sometimes it's a next generation thing.
Just takes the first person to actually start the chain.
I love that. I want to come back. I'll give you. I still would like to hear any other stories in terms of any adversity or struggle or some situation that you may have overcome and want to share. But I see Kate came up with a question, so I want to take time for that. Hey, Kate.
Hey, I actually came up with a suggestion for your Asian artist playlist. I would like to recommend Chrysanthi Tan, who is a non-binary Cambodian Greek American living in the Los Angeles area, composer, violinist. She toured with Ariana Grande and Paul Anka playing violin and arranging their strings. But she's an amazing musician she has music released on her own and with several other projects. So just wanted to get her name added to the list.
Thank you, Kate. Can you say the first name again?
Chrysanthi. So it's like chrysanthemum without the mum. CHRYSANTHE.
Chrysanthi Tan.
Tan, exactly.
T-A-N. Awesome.
T-A-N.
Thank you.
I love that. I want to encourage everyone in this room to not only to follow the moderators and the people, in this room, or, the guests in this room. You can take or leave us, but also when people are giving recommendations, it's a free thing that we can all do to help support all of the underrepresented communities, to go to their Spotify, to go to their Apple Music, to go to their Instagram, to go, especially, in the DSPs, add them, favorite them if you like them, and play their music. It actually really does track. Adding them to playlists, it's something that you can do for free that actually really does support artists in underrepresented communities and all our communities, so take the time, listen through a song. There are some songs that get sent to me that are not my favorite. I'll even let them play through and walk away from my phone and come back sometimes. But hopefully you're inspired to find an artist like Kate just mentioned, or some of the people that brought up today that are actually awesome and very worth listening to and or worth hiring. So just something to consider.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Really appreciate that.
I'll help someone out then.
Oh, please, Jess. Yeah, and Jess is the queen of the playlist.
I'm just gonna shout Biba Doobie out. I love my British artists. Biba Doobie.
Are you gonna? Do you know how to spell that?
Oh yeah, I got you. That's gonna be a B-E-A-B-A-B. Oh no, that's a D.
You're doing so good, Jess.
That was amazing.
You're doing so good.
Oh man. Okay. And then it's O-O-B-E-E.
Oh, wow.
It's a dirty hit artist.
I'm definitely checking it out.
But that carries over to my next question, actually.
Go for it.
A question I have. That's kind of inspired with the conversation I had with An, and I'd love to get everybody's input on it. But it's kind of like the conversation that An and I had. We were just talking about the K-pop phenomenon and kind of how it came over to the West. And I mean, obviously there's a little bit of history there. I mean, people have written like a thesis on the waves of K-pop coming to the West, where it's like Gangnam Style and then all the way to kind of a more mainstream K-pop. But I'm kind of curious on what everybody's thoughts are on it. And I remember, when BTS kind of was on the Billboard Music Awards for the very first time, how big of a deal that was. And that was like a few years ago. So, just kind of, I know I think there's a little bit of a, there can be kind of a bit of a jump to a conclusion of like, yeah, not everybody just not everyone just is obsessed with K-pop. There's a lot more artists out here that do more than just K-pop. So let's highlight some of them. But what do you guys think about this this amazing phenomenon?
For the floor. Any thoughts, anyone?
I think it's incredible, honestly. I mean, just to see the impact that they've had, not only just on American music, but on the wave of fandom, because it's just unparalleled. And
Oh
I've actually,
hell yes.
I know the fact that they just, line the airports every single time they come to town. It's just one of those things where it shows the power of their influence. And I mean, I've actually been going to KCON for a couple of years for work, actually. And it's just been very fascinating to see how the craze that was basically contained within the Staples Center has now just kind of permeated the whole industry. And the fact that they've now been able to, and I'm specifically referring to BTS and artists of that nature have been able to perform on some of the greatest US music stages like the Grammys and the Billboard Awards and all of that. So personally, I think it's just inspiring to see it come overseas, and also the fact that we know it's just basically the beginning of it.
Can I?
Um, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, Danny Chung runs a really great room or club that talks about K-pop, and I think if we kind of grab a little bit of tidbits on strategy in the way that K-pop and their industry over there rolls out artists, it's very much brand focused. It's like, I'm not saying it's not ever leading with the music, but they do a good job of creating a world around the artists, and that's a world that's especially visual that resonates with fans. Is definitely something that could be modeled here in the US. Not saying that we don't do it here, but they have so much emphasis on each of the individual K-pop artists within a group. Then they have the training, and then they debut them when everything is pristine. It's not as easy. I will say the ceiling over there is definitely opaque for indie artists. But if you take bits and parts of that strategy that's more brand focused, I think it's something that in even any artist, whether major or indie, can replicate over here.
That is awesome. Clayton, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I at least the way I look at it is, the K-pop phenomenon has also made me very aware that, the amazing ability for streaming to have made this music so global so fast. What other markets are there out there right now that could be the next K-pop phase? And one that I'm really excited about, and having gotten to spend a good amount, of time in India and around the Indian market, is really what's happening in the Bollywood scene, and a lot of the music that's coming out of India as well. And a lot of the lessons that I'm looking at, what they're doing in K-pop and how it can apply to Indian music crossing over into the United States, and territories like Africa as well, have some incredible music coming out of it, and I think there's just a great pattern here to really show how global music has really become.
Awesome point, Clayton. While you're there, did you also have a question?
No, not off the top of my head in regards to the conversation. Just figured I'd add a point.
Oh, cool, cool, cool. Awesome. Thank you. And while we're here, I see we got Twee here. Do you want to introduce? So we've been talking about her all night.
Yes. Yes. Everyone, please say hello to Twee. She is the artist that I currently work with. She has been releasing so many singles ahead of her EP this year, which will be her first EP. Welcome, Twee. Thank you for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for letting me know you guys were doing this. I didn't know you guys were having something. I've been so busy, but I wanted to just hop on and supportive on. And I love what you guys are doing. I'm not sure what we are actually discussing, so I don't know what I should talk about. But if I could say anything, I would say that I found on we found each other actually, or she sought me out in the middle of quarantine, and I wasn't ready for a manager. And I just remember telling myself, well, I guess I'll just take the meeting. And it was funny because we've never met in real life. Well, as of recently, we met once. But when I spoke to her over Zoom, I just instantly had such a connection to her. And I think not only because she was a woman, but because she was the same race as I am. She's Vietnamese and she's such a hard worker. And our values just aligned up so well. And I think it's so important for me to have somebody on the team that kind of understands where I come from and my journey and my struggles. So yeah, if I could say anything about that, that's I'm like a terrible public speaker. Um, but yeah,
You're
thank you,
clearly
Aunt.
you're clearly not, and we thank you. We're glad
Right.
that glad that you're here. So we're glad you took the time to just say hi. And we've been
Of
talking about your
course.
aunt's been really hyping you up, and so we're just glad to get you meet you in person.
Yeah, nice to meet all of you guys. And I think what you guys are doing is great and just spreading knowledge about AAPI artists and just bringing more visibility to the like especially indie artists too. And I love how everybody's giving recommendations of their favorite artists and stuff. And I think word of mouth is very powerful, which is why a lot of businesses depend on word of mouth. And so I think it's great that everybody's sharing their favorite artists.
Awesome,
We're
awesome.
so glad to meet you. And please, everybody in the room, give her a follow and check out her music.
She's a fantastic public speaker. She's just being modest. She just did a national interview or local-ish national.
Ooh, well done.
Was that me? Hello?
No, I think that wasn't you.
Sorry, we had a little bit of interference from a new user who doesn't know how to use Clubhouse just yet. Sorry about that.
Oh my gosh.
Go on about how amazing she is.
Sorry, I thought that was me. I was just saying that she did a very great interview on NBC Bay Area that highlighted Asian American artists, and so really happy to see that kind of narrative now being shifted onto the news.
Thank you, An.
Very cool, very cool. Jen, I see you on stage. You had a question.
Guys, yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to a good friend of mine and an artist I really respect. Her name is Lisa Dene. She is Filipino and not only one of the hardest working artists I know, but she also services the community with her podcast called Sound Scrub, where she basically just interviews other songwriters and artists and producers about the songs and how they came about, and gives them an extra platform, an extra voice. And she's starting to get into sync, and she's doing really well on all of her channels and platforms. And yeah, she's just a super super hard worker and a dope pop princess. And so I wanted to give her a shout out. Her name's Lisa Dene. It's D like dog, A, and like Nancy, A-E, Lisa Dene.
Awesome, thank you, Jen. I love that we're getting all these names of artists to check out.
Thanks, guys.
I'm so inspired by all this. I'm like literally making like a playlist right now, and I'm just it's hard to discover new music, especially given the light of the universe right now, not being able to go see live shows, not being able to have our kind of normal means to go discover music. So I think it's super cool that we're getting this list from people. So if you have any other recommendations or any more questions, raise your hand. Eric, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Very cool. Speaking of playlists, I just wanted to remind everyone, we did not do a listening session this past Saturday. We are doing it this Saturday. And the cool thing that we started to do now is we are taking starting next Wednesday, every week in the room, we're going to be spotlighting a song of someone that comes out of our Saturday listening sessions. So every Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern, you can come through, you can submit one song, and we will listen to that song and review it. And you just give feedback from a sync perspective, in terms of how it can be used, or if you have a desire for it to be put in a particular type of placement, or you envision it in an ad or on a television show. We'll give you some feedback and guidance for that. So if you want to submit a song, go to our site, controlcamp.com. If you look right above by the greenhouse, it tells you how to spell Control Camp, CTRL camp.com. And there is a submit page. You can submit one song, and we'll review it on Saturday. And then we'll spotlight some of those songs, or at least one of those songs, every week here in the room on Wednesday going forward. Okay. Cool. So as we have about 10 minutes left. We're right at the wrap up. If you have questions, you can raise your hand and come up. Otherwise, we're going to hold on, bring one person up. As I was talking, the ding started coming in. Mo, what's going on? Mo, are you there? You muted? I'll come back to you. Kristen, Motor Girl, are you there?
Hey guys, thank you so much for this room. It's been so great to hear from all of you. Pepe, I just had a kind of, I'm so interested about what's up pitches. I think it's such a great name, number one.
It's
And
the
I had
best name
to,
ever.
it is so great. And I had to kind of step out for a bit, so I didn't get to hear much about your company. I just think it's really interesting, like how I noticed that it's a woman-owned company, I believe, and you're co-founder. So I just wanted to hear more about it. Be interested.
Yes, we are. There are 3 women co-founders, and 2 of us are women of color, and all 3 of us have lived in all different places around the world. So I think that's what gives us our diverse backgrounds, and is one of the reasons why we want to lift up underrepresented voices. So yeah, we have a Facebook group. You can join us there if you haven't already. And then I think you'll get a feeling for who we are and what kind of events we put on. We post briefs in the group. We just posted one today. So if anyone in the room is not a member and you'd like to see it, go check it out. And we also have listening fiestas that are free to join. And we also put on panels. So yeah, we are we work in the sync world with music supervisors, and then we also work with indie artists to to educate and to connect them to music supervisors through these events.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, Kristen. And while we're there, Pepe, can you talk about just your transition as you were an independent individual composer. What led you to shift from that into the business side, pitching songs, pitching other people's songs, and then forming, a collective or an agency with the other 2 women? What brought you to that point?
Well, it happened pretty organically because as we got to know each other and our whole network of other songwriter producers, we would come across briefs as we were pitching ourselves individually, and then maybe I didn't have something for it, but Celia might have something. So we would reach out and say, hey, do you have something for this? And then we started talking about like, well, what if you got me a placement through your connection? What would we do? Would you take a cut of it? So it was all kind of happening in that way at first, just like on a small level, and then we finally said, well, it makes more sense for us to just join in as a team and represent each other as well as other artists that we like. So yeah, it was just a very gradual thing. It wasn't like we saw a need for it. I think that's what I would say. Like, this makes sense. It's a great way for us to work together and just kind of spread the connections and help each other.
How has it affected your own personal workload in terms of are you handling, you know, briefs and custom work at the same pace that you were before? Have you had to shift, and what's that been like for you?
I have had to shift a little bit. I don't I don't do as many of the really quick turnaround briefs as I used to, but now we will bring in different teams to work on projects. So we'll reach out to producers. Maybe there's a brief that their style would really fit better than mine anyway. So I feel like it's all working out. I get to focus on the genres that I'm really best at and love doing, and then we just build a team for everything else. So I think that it's like the collaboration has been so great over the last few years, and I think that's what has really helped my music to become better and better. Just to work with people who have strengths that I don't.
That's very cool. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, let's go back to Mo. Mo, were you there? I don't know if you were able to hear me before. Can you hear me?
I can. I'm so sorry. I had a bad connection. I really love this panel. I sent a message to you, Steph, because my daughter is biracial. She actually plays violin. She's half African American, half white. But she absolutely, do y'all know Mitski?
No, tell us.
Okay, Mitski, she is a rocker. She is a Asian rocker and she is insanely awesome. And my daughter completely fangirls over her. Elena is classically trained in violin, but she loves Mitski, and she's Japanese American and she's amazing. So I just thought I'd bring that up. When you're talking about representation, I don't know if y'all remember the Cheerios ad that had like the white and the black mixed couple. That was a huge moment for my family and representation. And then since then, Curtis and I, my husband and I, noticed representation out there, you know, with respect to that. So I really love this panel, and I appreciate all of you coming together and talking about uh, the different Asian artists that are out there. We're big fans, and we love Control Camp, and we love What Up Pitches, and just really happy to be here to listen. Thank you.
We love you, Mo. Mo, can you give us the spelling of Mitski so we can look her up?
Yes, it is Mitski, and she plays electric guitar. She's so awesome.
She sounds rad.
Yeah,
I
I'm on her
definitely
site
apparently
now.
need to know her because I just got texted by two people in the room for sure with giant all caps. You don't know Mitski? I was like, all right, clout card removed on my end. So
Well, that's why I think nights like this are important. And that's why I said, there are famous artists that we just might not be hip to. I'm old AF, as the kids say. I don't know everybody. I need everybody to give me all the cool recommendations. And I think that's super critical for our community, too. There's a lot of really great supervisors, managers, executives in the room who are also looking, and artists who want to collaborate with other people that, I think awareness is everything.
Koichi, I'm just glad to know that other cultures have their own cards. Like, if I don't know a particular group, my black card gets taken. So I'm glad that goes from
Yeah.
culture
By
to
the
culture.
way, my intern is trolling me now. She's young and she's like, "We love Mitski." Like, yeah, I know.
yeah,
I got like
Steph knows Blue Cantrell though, right, Steph? Hey.
Dang, he went there.
Wow.
No, that's an inside joke, and I can't talk any more about it than that if I want my life to continue.
Koichi's
So
just making me sound old. Koichi, there was a track that Koichi did, and I was like, this is gonna sound nuts, but I was like, and I figured like everyone I talk to now, I bring up an artist, and they're like, who's that? And so I didn't even bother saying Blue Cantrell. I actually sent him this embarrassing voice note singing like 15 seconds of the song. And I'm like, you remember this song back from then? I'm not going to do it here. And he's been trolling me ever since. He's like, yep, you're showing your age too. So
That was an awesome song. That's the song I think of.
Hit 'em up style, yes sir.
Yeah, that's an amazing song. That is funny.
well, now that we've established that I'm a loser and Koichi should also lose his clout card, I think we could get to kind of like final thoughts here. Eric, what do you think?
I totally agree. I totally agree. This has been an awesome discussion. And Alyssa, do you want to kick it off, or want to kind of go around and just final thoughts or remarks?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining today. As we mentioned, it's just very important for us to continue to have these conversations because otherwise we will remain in our own separated holes of the industry and not really be able to merge our talents and to find new talents like we just did today. So, always important to keep this up. So, thank you, everybody.
Awesome, awesome. And let's hear from our guest, Pepe. We're so glad to have you. Any last remarks?
I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you guys again for having this room tonight. I just want to say that I'm really glad that there's been more focus on AAPI voices, and even though like Koichi said earlier, there was a grim event that catalyzed it, but still, let's keep bringing attention to artists, producers, musicians, and all kinds of AAPI voices in the music industry, and let's support each other and see what we can do together.
Well
L-
said, Pepe.
Love it. Koichi.
Yeah, no, this was a dope room. Like I said, I mean, every time I feel like you guys have hosted something, in particular, with regards to a unique space. It's always been a great learning opportunity, and even though I come from this space, it's still there's plenty of stuff that I'm taking down notes on, and following more people and trying to. I'd love to follow up with everyone on the stage, and just to see like, okay, cool. Like, how can at least I help connect some dots, or help someone else tell their story or something. So definitely, Eric, Steph, Daraj, big shout outs for doing this, and for continuing to do the work.
Appreciate you, bro. And we're so glad to have you today. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, just thank you, everybody. Thank you to Control Camp for hosting and for Jessica for connecting us. I mean, happy Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month to everybody. We have full days. I know this year started off, quite grim, like Pepe said, but as long as we continue to have the conversation, I don't think there should be any hesitation to for us, for API people, to take ownership and make space for ourselves and make space for others. I'm huge on mentorship, and so happy to chat with anybody and connect with you guys as well.
That's amazing. And I just want to give our audience a huge shout out, especially our regulars. And I want to say the same thing that we said after our Black History Month room and our Women's History Month room that I've noticed, which is we have an incredibly diverse audience tonight. And I'm so proud to see both white, Black, Asian, all of the things, male, female, LGBTQIA, literally all of our communities represented, because it really takes all of us to be aware of all of these things and to show up and to do the work, as someone just so eloquently put it. So I'm really proud to see such a diverse community supporting each other and, sticking through for a whole 2-hour conversation, when not everybody understands that it does pertain to you too. So I'm really proud to see that our room is smart enough to get that, and super excited to, see what comes next.
Awesome, awesome. Daraj, you want to close us out and send us to the after party?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was beautifully said, Steph. It's always uh, really, I think, important and fascinating to kind of hear everybody's kind of entry into this space, but also some of the unique challenges and ways that's been overcome, or how to help and be a part and empathize with people and humanity, and even respect to the things that make us different, but we can also unite around a lot of commonality. So, yeah, I love it. I appreciate everybody, and everyone who's here, and everybody who had to cut out a little bit early. But with that said, we're gonna slide over to the after party, and drinks on Eric. So if you're following the club, make sure you slide through. We'll be in your hallway. If you're not following us, make sure you do, and we'll get you added to the room, and you'll see it pop up in your hallway. But with that said, we out. Koichi, give us that air horn, cuz.
Good
That
night, everybody.
Good
felt a
night,
little
everyone.
Thank
dehydrated.
you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See you, everybody.